you, thank you. What a fascinating evening. I hope you've all been enjoying yourselves as much as I have. On the bench over here, we've heard from a politician and a policy wonk, and I've been sitting and listening and imagining how things would be if they actually ran the country. So either Godfrey or Douglas as Prime Minister. I think I would go for Godfrey. Now, if Godfrey were PM, based on what he's said this evening and what he said in the press, he would abolish the welfare state. Drivers would be allowed to drink as much as they saw fit.
I don't believe that tabloids
they can all look it up. The NHS would no longer be free, and in fact it would become a crime to call any public provision free. In keeping with his libertarian views, pub landlords would be allowed to hang signs saying no blacks, and signs would not be the only things to hang. He'd bring back capital punishment too. And finally, famously, it's been mentioned before, but I can't resist bringing it back again, women would be made to clean behind their fridges. What a beautiful vision. The borders would be, our national borders would be on lockdown, of course, not to stop people from getting in, to stop the stampede of people who'd be desperate to leave. Actually, I do feel sorry for the proposers this evening. I mean, how depressing it must be to see the world the way that they see it, be so closed, so defensive, to see threats everywhere, to feel that you are all that stands between civilization and the barbarian at the gate. As I was listening to them, I was reminded of those Japanese soldiers at the end of World War II who refused to believe that peace had broken out and hid for decades in the jungle, waging an imaginary war on imaginary enemies. Fantasy. Or, as Government Minister Ken Clarke said last week of the Anti-Immigration Brigade, typical right-wing nationalist escapism. But let's try anyway, taking the motion at face value for a moment. There's been too much immigration, it says. Therefore, it follows there are too many immigrants here now. Well, if that is the case, what should be done about it? The proposers have been curiously silent on that topic. What should be done? Send them back? I have to declare an interest. I am myself an immigrant. I came to this country at the age of 3, and I'm very proud to be British. But if that were the solution, because there has been too much immigration, there are too many immigrants here, then I guess I'd have to go back to the proverbial bongo land, as Godfrey calls the recipients of UK foreign aid. Now, Godfrey said in the past, as we know, that we should stop sending aid money to these countries. Well, you know, maybe. I'd like to expand on what my colleague said earlier. The World Bank has just published a report saying that remittances, that's the money sent back by immigrants to their families, were worth $530 billion in 2012. That's 3 times larger than the total global aid budget. So despite Douglas's very unselfish concern about the way that we rob the third world of their workers, he needn't worry. In fact, immigrants certainly do export benefits to less developed countries, and I would argue that's a very good thing. Remittances go directly to poor families, much more effective than aid money that gets eaten up by corruption or in buying foreign arms. But what about the impact of immigrants on this country. I mean, we have been told this evening that there is a problem. I'm still not clear exactly what the problem is. It's not a financial or an economic problem. These mythical studies that Douglas is citing, every single study that I've seen has shown that immigrants have boosted the economy and contributed to the public purse. The fact that the political community is now united in falling over themselves to talk tough on immigration is neither here nor there. You'd be hard-pressed to find a business leader who talks the same way. If you read the FT, which I'm sure that some of you do, you'll have read about the head of the CBI commenting in there that if we had tougher curbs on immigration, that would have a material negative impact on the economy. Politicians may be falling over themselves to stop immigrants coming in. Business leaders is a totally different story. So what else could the problem be? Well, it could be social, as the proposers have suggested, and there are always issues with integration, and there's nothing new going on in that regard, despite what they'd have you believe. On a Panorama programme last month, there was a young Asian guy who was interviewed in Slough, and he said that he was, to be honest, worried about the Romanians coming to Slough because they didn't want to mix and they kept themselves to themselves. And the interviewer says, isn't that what people used to say about your community, the Pakistani community? And the young guy looks surprised for a moment. And then he says, yes, but look at me now. Look at me now, he says. And it may take time, and it may not be seamless, but integration does happen. And where it's slow to happen, the answer is to help facilitate those changes, not to deepen the divisions. Now, Douglas mentioned the 2011 census and the fact that it revealed that only 44.9% of London residents are now white British. In an article of his that I read last year on the same topic, he argues that therefore London has become a foreign country. Has it? Well, if it has, presumably that's because there are too many British people like me, I live in London, who have black or brown skin, or who have white skin, but whose families originate from outside of the UK, like the 300,000 French people living in London now, coming over here with their baguettes and their smelly cheeses, turning our capital city into a foreign land. In that same article of his, Douglas wrote that he is hampered with white skin. Poor him. But I know what he meant. He doesn't want to be called a racist in a discussion such as this one. And I don't see racism in his article. I see one overwhelming underlying feeling, and that is fear. He says that the 2011 census was ignored because, and I'm quoting now, it is a glimpse into a troubling future. Perhaps we passed over it so quickly because few people can bear this much reality. So the truth is so terrifying that we can't even bear to look at it, can't face up to it. Utterly and totally terrifying. Too much immigration, too many immigrants. And now I think we're finally getting to what the problem is. And the problem is fear. Fear of the other, fear of the unknown, fear for the future, of what the future may hold. And immigrants are the perfect repository for all of our fears. They, we, the perfect people to blame. Emotions matter. How people feel, how they feel about immigration is important. People are not bad, they're not evil if they worry about immigration. But when you look closely at why people feel the way that they do, bear in mind what's based on reality and what's based on dark imagining. And remember also that the motion, think about the wording of it. It's not about regulating numbers tomorrow. It's about stoking anxieties today. And my final thought, I think we should remember that where fear lights the way, sooner or later, hate creeps out of the shadows. If history teaches us anything, any lesson at all, it's surely that. To paraphrase a famous orator, what we should fear is fear itself, and I urge you to reject the motion today. Thank you.